Our collective future in dome life, next on The Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. But before we start, I want to take a moment to invite any business owners out there that would like to support our program through advertising to email us. The Dr. Duke Show reaches tens of thousands of like-minded people every day, hundreds of thousands occasionally, and we could be a great partner to help promote your business. Simply email media@fpeusa.org. That's media@fpeusa.org to get the conversation started. All right, Katie is kicking things off with a look at the health of our republic.
I learned long ago that all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, but all play and no work makes Joe the President of the United States, where popping out of a coma once in a while to give a speech is supposed to convince everyone that all is well. But it isn't. Biden just gave his first speech in front of the United Nations General Assembly, making sure to grovel weekly to his new masters.
We've lost so much to this devastating pandemic that continues to claim lives around the world and impact so much on our existence. But our shared grief is a poignant reminder that our collective future will hinge on our ability to recognize our common humanity and to act together.
New World Order! New World Order! And now this video will be flagged as being a conspiracy theory or something, but since I believe in free thought, you decide for yourselves. Right now, let's throw out today's question. How long before Biden says New World Order? Because we know Australia already let that kangaroo out of the pouch.
We will be looking at what contact tracing looks like in the New World Order.
And if you don't think this video has been flagged, just look at this. Even searching on YouTube for the video clip of the health official saying New World Order prompted a context box explaining that New World Order is a conspiracy theory. Okie dokie. That's why if you could share this video to counter the suppression, I'd appreciate it. And as a global community, like the one Joe Biden loves, we'd all appreciate it.
As a global community, we're challenged by urgent and looming crises, wherein lie enormous opportunities if we can summon the will and resolve to seize these opportunities. Will we work together to save lives, defeat COVID-19 everywhere, and take the necessary steps to prepare ourselves for the next pandemic? For there will be another one.
For there will be another one. And the reasoning is Dr. Anthony Fauci, the greatest doctor not named Jill Biden, must need another book deal. You heard it from the donkey's mouth. There will be another pandemic. The Chinese bees are busily working on it. Wuhan. And here's some free advice for whoever writes Biden's speeches. Don't make him ask questions, rhetorical or otherwise. He looks like a lost old man doing it because he is a lost old man.
Will we meet the threat of challenging climate? Or will we fail to harness the tools? Or will we suffer the merciless march of ever-worsening droughts and floods? Will we affirm and uphold the human dignity? Will we apply and strengthen the core tenets of the international system? Or will we allow those universal principles to be trampled and twisted in the pursuit of naked political power?
Ooh, pick the last one. Naked political power. That's the one right there, Joey. As for the rest of the questions, why don't you just go ask your Ouija board for the answers or your magic 8-ball, whichever toys your handlers let you play with. But please, continue.
We've ended 20 years of conflict in Afghanistan. And as we close this period of relentless war, we're opening a new era of relentless diplomacy, of using the power of our development aid to invest in new ways of lifting people up around the world.
Translation: we will give you all the money you could ever want for all the things you could ever want. Just ask the Taliban. They're riding in swans. Yes, swans. All while holding assault rifles and rocket launchers because I'm sure it's their way of fishing. Those assault rifles are too dangerous in American hands, so Biden was kind enough to have the Taliban keep them so as not to endanger anyone here. I'd say that all looks more like ugly ducklings, but to each his own. After all, it can't be her own because it's the Taliban and they don't respect women by giving them rights, despite what Joe Biden says. That little swan song came just hours after announcing that women could not go to work in Afghanistan anymore. But that's A-okay with Joe since he doesn't go to work either. He's too busy playing to be bothered with such things as, truth and reality. His handlers can't have him talk either, and they go so far as to interrupt UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson to preemptively stop Biden from speaking.
Interrupts or unbalances the Belfast Good Friday Accords. That's the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. That's the. I think
Thank you. Let's go. Thank you. What did he say?
I have no idea. I hope the microphone got it. No. British reporters get questions, and we don't get any.
Did anyone ask? Come on, man. He's a well-trained puppy, just sitting in the chair and only signaling to kick out the press. Now, you tell me if I'm way off base, but I think this Daily Mail headline from Friday really encompasses the Joe Biden presidency. President Biden, 78, hits the beach as the Pentagon admits it killed 7 kids in a drone strike, the French recall their ambassador, the FDA blows up his booster plans, and 12,000 Haitian migrants set up camp under a bridge in Texas. It's been almost a week and still no response by the president to all of that. But no worries, team.
And as the United States turns our focus to the priorities and the regions of the world like the Indo-Pacific that are most consequential today and tomorrow, we'll do so with our allies and partners through cooperation at multilateral institutions like the United Nations to amplify our collective strength and speed our progress toward dealing with these global challenges.
Translation: I don't care about Americans.
It is a fundamental truth of the 21st century within each of our countries and as a global community that our own success is bound up in others succeeding as well. To deliver for our own people, we must also engage deeply with the rest of the world.
New World Order. New World Order. Here's a provocative thought, though. What does it mean when even the same media who blames everything on Orange Man Bad has to finally put its tail between its legs and stop humping everything Biden does? NBC's Chuck Todd is, I guess the bravest of the dogs in the media for doing such an act.
Well, look, I think he's got a pretty big credibility crisis on his hands because all of these problems in some ways showed up after he said something basically the exact opposite. Afghanistan withdrawal wasn't going to be messy. This wasn't going to look like Saigon. The booster shots, he came out and essentially said 8 months and even indicated maybe we should start it as soon as 5 months. Now we're not sure if anybody under 65 is going to get a booster shot.
Ouch. I bet that jab hurt. Please, go on.
He's had, and of course the border has been, whether this, we can talk about the border problems. You could say there's years in the making, but it's pretty clear we have a bigger problem now than we've had in years. And these policies have turned into becoming a magnet.
Ouch. Double jab right in the arm, but you'll need a booster. However, we must remember that this is the same NBC that praises Fauci and his panic porn, so there isn't much to congratulate them on. But still refreshing to call a spade, or a president awful when his policies are bad. Usually it's just the lone Peter Doocy of Fox News who shows any sort of consistency with pushback, questioning, and reporting, especially with his favorite circle back girl, Jen Psaki, who just tripped all over herself when questioned about the border flood with unvaccinated people.
Is somebody asking the foreign nationals who are walking into Del Rio, Texas and setting up camps on this side of the border for proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test?
Well, first of all, I can readdress for you or re-talk you through what steps we take.
Can you re-talk us all through whatever you just said?
Let me explain to you again, Peter, how our process works. As individuals come across the border, and they are both assessed for whether they have any symptoms. If they have symptoms, the intention is for them to be quarantined. That is our process. They're not intending to stay here for a lengthy period of time. I don't think it's the same thing. It's not the same thing. These are individuals, as we've noted and as we've been discussed. We are expelling individuals based on Title 42 specifically because of COVID, because we want to prevent a scenario where large numbers of people are gathering, posing a threat to the community and also to the migrants themselves.
Oh, they aren't staying here long. So that means that the thing that must not be named, the thing Psaki said, but I can't say, that thing isn't that big of a deal. That thing is only going to go after the ones who are staying here long, like your 2-year-old. So that's why you have to mask that kid up. That'll take care of the thing that you're not allowed to name out loud. At least you know that Biden is raising the limits on refugee acceptance to 125,000 beginning in October. As the Washington Post explained, under the proposed admissions levels, the United States next year will accept up to 40,000 refugees from Africa, 15,000 from East Asia, 10,000 from Europe and Central Asia, 15,000 from Latin America and the Caribbean, and 35,000 from Near East and South Asia. Another 10,000 refugees can be accepted from any region. State Department spokesman Ned Price said the cap reaffirms our commitment to refugee resettlement in line with our long tradition of providing a safe haven and opportunity to individuals fleeing persecution. But why would anyone from anywhere in this world want to come here? I thought we're systemically racist and have no freedoms here, and therefore we must rip down everything this country ever was. I mean, we are well on our way. But, that'll be a video for another day. Biden gave his 30-minute speech to the UN, and now he can go back to slumber, just letting the Republic continue its death by 1,000 paper cuts. In lieu of giving away a Band-Aid, if you could share this video, hopefully we can do a little healing. Until next time, stay healthy, America.
Time now for Culture Cast with Vicki McKenna. Vicki, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Duke.
Well, you shared with me last week a really interesting article about the future of dome life, and I want you to introduce that article, and let's talk about it.
All right. This is an article by a woman named Tara Thieke. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing her name correctly. American Mind, which is a publication of the Claremont Institute. And the interesting thing about this article, it's not so much about dome life. You see that picture, it looks very futuristic. But it's about the concept of not being able to escape. And so going back to some of the dystopian stories and literature and some of the films that were made of this sort of, technocratic future that demands total fidelity to whatever the truth is declared to be by those in power. And that's really what she's writing about, is that as you see even more signs that Western civilization is starting to come undone, where do you go? Can you escape? You see the rise of what she describes as high modernity or the high moderns. It's the rise of a technocratic elite, not people who are committed to the truth, but people who are committed to a certain belief system that enable them to declare themselves more capable of making decisions for other people. They necessarily seize power. And so it's that concept she is talking about. And I think she makes an outstanding case that we are very, very close here in the West. It's not just the United States, but it's also other Western countries where if you disagree with the declarations of the technocratic elite, they will prohibit you from sharing information about your disagreement. There isn't debate. You've seen this in big tech. You've seen shutting down any kind of dissent in science and then somehow declaring consensus only and no dissent as high science. It is a complete unwinding of the principles of liberty, personal choice, and frankly, the foundations of Western civilization. And this is a woman who I think makes a powerful case that we are very, very close to being in a position where we won't have an elsewhere to go. We won't have a place to escape, as the Soviets did trying to get to the United States or the free Western world. because all of that is now being managed for us.
Yeah, and I think it is a fascinating thesis. But if you go back 80 years, or even before that, the dystopian writers of the last century have been talking all about this. What's different now from then? I remember, I know you read the Brothers Karamazov recently. I teaching it right now. As far back as 1881, Dostoevsky predicted a future where messages were flying through the air, very much like email, and a web of technology, Dostoevsky predicted, was going to be able to allow greater freedom, but also for the autocrats greater control if they wanted to use that. And what's different now between the time of, say, George Orwell, who gave us 1984, very prescient, is that they finally have it. The techno lords have created these global networks, and not only have they created global networks, but they have control over those networks that give them power even over governments. They seem to be controlling and dictating to governments what will and will not happen. And so I think that the final piece is in the place now that the technocrats not only have the power, but they have the power to globalize and to bully, and if not completely shut down, if they chose to, certain elements of government. That's where we are today, and that's a very dangerous thing.
Well, and if you think of Amazon Web Services and how much control they have over the United States government, it's astonishing. I mean, this is a company that operated essentially at a loss for more than a decade while it was building up its ability to insinuate itself into all levers of power. And now, who's more powerful? My congressman, my senator, Chuck Schumer, or Jeff Bezos? And that's what this is actually about, is that, and you're exactly right, once the technocrats got control of information, and you know, for that first 5 years of the internet, where people used to make declarations like information wants to be free, and this is fantastic, this is the Wild West of free speech, and look how wonderful we can self-regulate. That was never going to last, and we should have seen that. This is one of the things that this article actually makes a point in talking about, is missing the signs, and now even yet not being willing to take a step back and saying we can undo this, because we do still have power to undo this. But there doesn't seem to be anyone in power, in representative power, that is interested in taking on what now is a much, much harder fight. I mean, there's a United Nations document that was released last week. A friend of mine is talking about it, called Our Common Ground. And it is essentially the United Nations saying, now that these pieces are in place, now that we have control and fear and obsessive safetyism, now that we have all of these large companies having wrecked Main Street, having, you know, destroyed the concept of work for a living, having obliterated information, controlled information and faith, all these pieces are in place. Now it is time for the United Nations to slide in to the driver's seat and start making decisions. And that's not me being a crank or a conspiracy theorist. That is a document that was released last week. I mean, we are very close, in my opinion, to a socialist singularity that we may never be able to escape unless we want to escape the West to something that you know that is perhaps even worse than what we're experiencing now.
Yeah, and there's nothing outside of the West that doesn't signify is coming along behind us to that same fate. Certainly, they're not going to win America and then leave Guatemala alone. Vicki, after the break, let's pick this up and talk about some of the consequences after the break. Back now with Vicki McKenna for the second part of our Culture Cast. You had mentioned the United Nations, and I think you're exactly right. They came out last week with a kind of a mini manifesto about this is the time. Right. We see what's happening with global COVID, the pandemic. The pandemic has taught them that even in places like America and the West, that mandates and lockdowns and huge government interventions in free rights, civil rights, they'll be tolerated if you can convince people or lie to them enough that it's quote unquote for their own good. But even with the United Nations, we've been talking about Agenda 2030 for 30 years, right? And 2030 basically said, let's move people out of the suburbs, get rid of suburban living, pile people up in cities, cluster them in small relative areas of real estate where everyone's going to be packed, and close off the rest of the world to them.
Absolutely.
That is the dome.
And you're exactly correct. And then you are 100% dependent on the elites in power. You are purely dependent on their good nature. But notice how they have behaved. Notice how the city of Minneapolis or Portland or Seattle or even Madison, Wisconsin or Milwaukee, Wisconsin have behaved. Chicago, you can throw this, you can throw all kinds of examples out on the utter and you can almost say predictable cascading dysfunction and it's never so bad. It never gets so bad that you just reject it. I mean, people, I hate to use the hackneyed, example of the frog in the pot of water, but Daniel Patrick Moynihan once said, this is what defining deviancy down means. You will put up with so much awfulness and you will convince yourself that that's the new state of normal. And so you're waiting for an ever lowering standard of awfulness before you finally start to act. People are going to be dead in the streets before anybody figures out that it's just too awful to tolerate en masse for any additional period of time. Back to the United Nations. The interesting thing about that declaration, I mean, there's a lot of stuff about the Great Reset. And that's a quote from Klaus Schwab, who had said, this is our opportunity. COVID is our opportunity to now reset the markets of the world and the choices of the world to align with the choices that we believe are better for humanity. They truly believe that they are Mr. Wither in that hideous strength, and they are just more capable and qualified to making decisions for the little people. They truly believe that. But it's about what you see about science and information in that document. Science isn't science. Science has become utterly a construction utterly of politics. Science is about what the people who are in charge want science to be about. And so that is how we can have declarations that natural immunity is meaningless in COVID, or that someone can declare that earthquakes are caused by climate change when that's manifestly insane. And that is the scarier thing, is that you couldn't even escape by pointing to actual objective science if we ultimately get this global dome life that it seems so many people believe is appropriate for governance of the entire population of this planet. I mean, they think they're the United Federation of Planets. They think they're Jean-Luc Picard and that they're going to act benevolently. But we have already seen what benevolent looks like. Benevolence looks like Andrew Cuomo sending people to their deaths in nursing homes.
Well, what you're talking about is not science, actually. It's scientism, right?
Correct.
It's the elevation.
It's a philosophy, yeah.
It's the elevation of science to the level of religion and all-encompassing world religion. You mentioned that hideous strength. That's exactly the dystopian world that C.S. Lewis was imagining. And I'll tell you, at the university, to close this out, I'm seeing it in the younger kids, too. College-age kids are authoritarian already. We had a long conversation in my class yesterday where it's almost always females. I got to tell you, it is almost always women who are arguing that you shouldn't be allowed to speak if you hurt people's feelings, that language has to be policed so people don't get their feelings hurt. It is stunning to me how young females in this, college-age females in this culture, have already completely and utterly conformed and are willing to go along. You label something safety, they'll march right behind it, no matter how fascist it is. I actually used the word. I said, you're being fascist and don't even know it. What gives you the right to tell me I can't use the word fireman anymore because somebody may be triggered by it, and then you turn around and tell me I can't use the word trigger anymore because that evokes guns, and they're 100% behind this kind of banning of language already.
Way back in the day when music still didn't suck, remember when Simon and Garfunkel did The Sound of Silence? Yeah. That's what we are coming on. Listen, so many people saw it, Duke. Dostoevsky saw it. C.S. Lewis saw it. So many of the great writers saw this happening. Robert Bork saw it in 1996 with his book Slouching Toward Gomorrah. People didn't pay attention to the signs. We're not at the beginning of this. We are coming up to the closing act. And there is very little time left to start pushing back. And I don't have a lot of confidence simply because too many people are already slowly being cooked and don't even realize it. Right now, they just think it's a little warm.
It's time for some real education. We are sticking with our good friend John as it would be in English, Bernini, the great polymath, the great sculptor, architect, painter, man of the theater from the 17th century, the great Baroque artist. And it's only fitting that we end Gian Lorenzo Bernini week with perhaps his most stunning and his most signature achievement. That, of course, is the Ecstasy of Saint Teresa. Take a look at the full picture here. This is a remarkable piece of sculpture. It is one of the most remarkable sculptural achievements ever attained. The Ecstasy of Saint Teresa, or the Transverberation of Saint Teresa, as it's known, was sculpted between 1647 and 1652. It is the central sculptural group in white marble in the Coronaro Chapel in Santa Maria della Vittoria, Roma, the great cathedral. It was designed and completed by Bernini, the leading sculptor of his day, who also designed the setting for the chapel itself in marble, stucco, and paint. It is one of the sculptural masterpieces of the High Roman Baroque. It depicts Saint Teresa of Avila, the two central sculptural figures of the swooning nun on the right and the angel with a spear about to pierce her with an ecstatic vision, intense pain leading to pleasure, ecstasy in the presence of her God. So the two central sculptural figures, again, the angel with the spear and Teresa falling back, derive from an episode described in Teresa Avila's mystical, cloistered life and in her own autobiography entitled The Life of Teresa of Jesus, which her life spanned 1515 to 1582. So this was fairly contemporary. This group is illuminated by the natural light which filters through a hidden window in the dome. Those are those golden strands of light that pour down on the picture there and are underscored by gilded stucco rays. Teresa is shown lying on a cloud, indicating that this is intended to be a divine apparition we are witnessing. Other witnesses appear in the side walls, life-size, high-relief donor portraits of male members of the Cornaro family. For instance, Cardinal Federico Cornaro and the Doge, the former Doge of Venice, Giovanni I Cornaro, are present here and shown discussing the event in the boxes as if they were watching a theater performance. Although the figures are executed in white marble, walls and panels in a theater-like surrounding, above all, you have the vault of the chapel, which is frescoed with an illusionist, cherub-filled sky with the descending light of the Holy Ghost allegorized as a dove, and it all comes cascading down on the enthralled Saint Teresa of Avila. All right, just a quick reminder that the best way to access our content is to download the Freedom Project Media app. It's absolutely free. It's absolutely wonderful. You can get it anywhere that you can get free apps, so just do it. Simply search Freedom Project in your app store and get access to 18 new videos a week, plus all of our award-winning lectures and animations. Now we want to take a moment to show some love to our Patriot Club members. Today we'd like to give a great big shout out to Frederick from Columbus, Ohio. Freddie, my man, thank you so much for your support. And that's going to do it for this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. Until the next time, stay educated, just like Frederick did, my friends. Stay educated.